Welcome to the hottest part of summer when all your favorite YouTubers refuse to put on makeup or style their hair or hide the bra straps because it's just going to become a hot, melty mess. It's not you, it's me, and my parents' insistence that air conditioning is for wimpy rich people who can't cope with the weather. Sometimes what you need is just a plain black shirt. Well, it makes a good starting point at least. If you haven't been following along with me, hi, I'm Mare. I'm putting together a small capsule wardrobe because I'm in desperate need of clothes that don't scream, I live in hoodies and yoga pants. I mean, I do kind of live in middle-aged activewear, though right now it's so hot outside I'm wearing as little as possible and hiding in the basement because air conditioning is on the action list for autumn when the prices come down. Because my body size is currently in a state of flux, I'm making clothes that are adjustable and or alterable. Because I've come to seriously dislike investing in fabric to make a project only to not wear it, or size out of it. I originally chose this blouse because I was going to a family event. I'm not going to mince words here, it was a family member celebration of life, and that usually means dark and somber clothing. And if anyone knows dark and somber clothing, it's this girl. Now, if you ask my mum, which would take some doing because she too is no longer with us, she would say I don't look good in black. That's fair. I'm kind of beyond caring because I like black and that's what counts. The top I'm making is the Gilbert top by Helen's Closet. It looks a little retro 70s with the collar and long bell sleeves. Remember kids, it's not outdated, it's retro. Not gonna lie, I like bell sleeves. If it wasn't for the bell sleeves, I'd probably do the mid-length short sleeves, but me and my upper arms are still not on speaking terms with each other, so bells it is. Even though I probably won't be able to wear this top regularly until autumn now because of the aforementioned midsummer heat wave. I originally thought I'd be sticking with plain black for this. There's a nice little yoke at the back that would look great with a feature fabric like I did with my March dress. At the time I was planning the wardrobe, I didn't want to risk offending anyone who might be sitting behind me that didn't have a sense of humor, so no llamas, no Dia de los Muertos, sugar skull prints, no embroidering a bowling team logo, no dipping into the Baby Yoda fat quarter stash. I really thought I'd be better off playing it straight. Honestly, 99.6% of that side of the family has a sense of humor. I just didn't want to risk sitting in front of the 0.3% who don't. Or risk giving Uncle Mark an attack of the giggles, because that could totally happen. As it turned out, I was sitting in front of the folks with a slightly atrophied sense of haha, so crisis averted mainly through not getting the project done, but that means that we can now go crazy with the cheese whiz and put something fun on the yoke. If you tuned in last time, you already have an idea of what's coming up because I took a day to teach myself embroidery. Well, enough embroidery to get started. I'll fill you in a bit more when we get there. To get started, though, we have to go back in time a little. About 2 months or so should do it. If you haven't been watching my other videos on a mad dash to a capsule wardrobe that attempts to make me look more respectable than your usual basement troll, and why haven't you? I've been using a second-hand Epson ultra short throw projector I bought off eBay to trace out my patterns. I'm tracing in case I need to make adjustments for fit or my projector suddenly develops sentience and demands reparations on behalf of the electronic working device community. Seriously, have none of you seen Blade Runner? Or a Closet Historian video? My fabric is, once again, a fine clearance vintage of unknown fibers. I do a burn and sniff test, but the last time I tried that I couldn't decide if the smell was burning paper or shed cat hair. So I'll accept it for the unknown fiber it is, and I'm sure we'll get along just fine. It probably has a greater than zero-sum quantity of polyester and or rayon. It definitely has cat hair. That's unavoidable in this household. I did give it a wash, and it feels a bit like cotton, so that's what I'm going to estimate it to be. Some sort of cotton blend. The putting together of things went on hold while I worked on the yoke. I did some research on whether one should embroider the piece when the shirt is in its component pieces or when it's all put together, and the answer was a somewhat frustrating yes. Basically, you can embroider the finished piece unless there's a good reason not to, like you're embroidering into the seam allowance or what have you. I put this together while everything was still unsewn, because it will be easier to move around and I'd like to get closer to my seam allowance. Also, the yoke has a lining, so I'd ideally like the lining to protect the backside of my embroidery. Of course, if something comes loose and needs repair, kinda hooped. But by that point I may decide to swap out the yoke for something else, so who knows? I found a really cute mushroom and flower design on Etsy that I think will look great as the main focus of the yoke, kinda like a fairy garden at night. The pattern is Mushroom Forest by River Birch Threads, and if you don't find it in the description, you probably just look it up on Etsy. I used some crafter's carbon paper to trace the design onto my fabric. There was no video last week because I was busy playing with embroidery floss. Actually, that's a lie. I took a 2-week break because I took some sick time. You may not see it on camera, but I'm recovering from what I think is either heat rash or a mild allergic reaction to some Costco Kirkland brand nut butter. So my skin is itchy and sensitive and sometimes looks like I have a sunburn when I assure you I have not been anywhere near the sun. So no makeup or other possible irritants while I try to work up the energy to do more than sit on the sofa in the loosest clothes I can find. Spoiler alert, the theme for the next few videos is probably going to be loose things made from breathable fabric so I can do more than sit in my basement without resembling a barely ambulatory strawberry. Let's take a look at the finished piece, shall we? I seriously considered adding Slimer from the Real Ghostbusters cartoon of the 1980s trying to outrun a proton beam above the mushrooms, but I think this will do just fine. Simple is sometimes best. Let's put this thing together. There's a spider in there. I would like to think that there's more cotton than plastic in this shirt, but honestly, I can't say for certain, and at this point in the year, that bugs me. Not necessarily from a sustainability standpoint, though that is a valid concern. My issue is breathability. I tend to shop from the clearance aisle at my fabric store because it's vastly less expensive than buying the current top tier of fashion fabrics on display. I'd say there's 4 tiers of fashion fabric at the store I frequent. The first tier, seasonal fashion fabric, which can run anywhere north of $30 per meter depending on what they're offering. They had some linen on display when I bought the fabric for the blouse, but it was prohibitively expensive and I'm not sure it had the kind of drape I was looking for. If I'm going to drop $20 plus per meter on fabric, I'm going to be choosy. The next tier is quilting cotton, which again, depending on sales, can be anywhere from $11 to $30 per meter. As I've said before, I don't know if the fabric store is cashing in on desperate quilters or idiots like me who will shell out the big bucks for Baby Yoda or Ouija board parts on a circle skirt. But again, you gotta be choosy. Printed cotton often has a different heft and drape than fashion cotton, which might work well if you're buying 1 or 2 meters for a cute underbust corset, but not if you're putting contrast sleeves on a pretty dress that you plan to wear in 30+ degrees Celsius weather. Third and fourth tiers are the clearance section, which houses everything from out-of-season fabrics to overstock without tags. This is probably the most dangerous section because you can get anything from real wool coating to mystery plastic blend blouse drape fabric, and you can walk out of the store with enough fabric to make 4 dresses. One with full voile lining and a pair of pants for under $200. Think about that for a moment. Yes, there will be the added expenses of my labor and any notions I might need, But you can't get a plus-size dress at Torrid for less than $50 unless you shop in the clearance section, in which case you're probably looking at a lot of Lycra, and it probably won't fit very well. I started off this morning wearing a top I'd purchased online from Pennington's last year on a clearance for under $40. At the time I bought it, it was too small. Now it's about the right size, if not a little bit big, but it doesn't fit properly in the shoulder strap. And all 4 of the clearance blouses I bought last year that didn't fit at the time that now probably do, all hinge on knowing where your strapless bra is. Mine's gone missing. Probably isn't the right size either. A new bra would add another $60 to $80 onto the bill. So being able to make 4 dresses that I can hopefully wear with a decent bra already in my possession for less than $200, great. But you gotta be choosy. The night my skin started rebelling on me, we'd had a couple of friends over for dinner and socializing, and I was feeling pretty good. We turned on a couple of fans to keep things cool, and I was wearing my linen rayon liseron blouse, which I have since found out is 70% rayon and 30% linen. It wasn't until after, when folks had gone home and I'd turned in for the night, that I realized my skin actually hurt. It was almost a burning sensation, it was so hot. And I remember getting up to run a cold washcloth over my torso before finally managing to fall asleep. And then for the next week, I was red as a ripe strawberry everywhere my skin touched something, whether it was clothing or the seat of a chair or the sofa. It was like having a sunburn but not having gone out in the sun. And I think I described it to the husband as feeling like I'd just gotten a full body tattoo, that sensitive skin sensation from the needle. Did I have an allergy to the one different thing I'd eaten? Hard to say, since I don't generally have any food allergies that I know of, and as far as I know, I've never had a bad reaction to any of the nuts and seeds in Kirkland nut and seed butter. It could have been just a really bad heat rash, but I was wearing a cool linen blend blouse and had put on fans to keep things even cooler. The hardest part of the experience has been finding things to wear that don't cause another flare-up, because the world is currently burning and most of the clothes in my wardrobe have some sort of man-made fiber content, whether it's my comfy pants and cotton t-shirts, which you would think were designed to keep you cool when doing things like working out, or the few summery clothes I bought in previous years. So I guess this is to say that I went shopping last week with a friend and I concentrated on buying fabrics from the clearance section with good linen or cotton content that will hopefully be breathable and have some drape. Because with what's left of the summer, which around here usually lasts into late September, early October, I need to make some loose, breathable clothes. And as a person whose choice of color palette is diametrically opposed to the sad beige and pale pink world that currently seems to be the aesthetic online, the fabrics have some color. So if that's something you're interested in, keep an eye out for upcoming videos, because one of the fabrics we chose is surprising. But it will hopefully keep me from overheating despite the sun's attempts to do me in from within the shade of my own home. Steps are being taken to ensure no further inhabitants of the pin cauldron, though I've considered pressing into service another plastic container with a sealable lid. It's not as aesthetic, but it would be safer for both me and the local spider population. There's not really much I can say about the assembly process. After the spider situation, everything was rather unexciting by comparison. I followed the instructions that came with the pattern. To boil it down, you have your front facings and your yoke facing, and somewhere in there you use the mystical burrito method to put it all together. It's all very well explained. Once the collar is in, it's mostly sewing up the sides, tacking down the facings, hemming, and installing the sleeves. Again, and I stress this, the instructions are detailed, well written, and easy to follow. Any issue with the top are entirely of my own making. The fabric is so dark there really isn't much to see. That's something I really need to keep in mind for future projects. To To be horribly, horribly blunt, I've seen some pretty strictly themed color schemes on other channels, and after a while I just wonder how many sad beige or soft pink skirts, cinnamon jumpers, and canned pumpkin orange poofy sleeve tops one person requires. While I enjoy a somewhat gothy wardrobe, the last thing I need is someone rolling their eyes and giving my channel a pass because I'm just making one more basic black cottagecore witchy dress. No matter whether it's based off some overpriced dress that only goes up to a size 6. And no, I'm probably not talking about the channel you think I am, because I firmly believe that every day is Halloween, and the channel I'm thinking of doesn't really share that sense of whimsy. Though I do think the world would be vastly improved by more black witchy dresses, so there is at least one of those planned in the somewhat nearish future. But to get back on track, I followed the directions and now I have a new top. And it only took a day and a scare worthy of a minor cardiac event to sew it all up. I'm gonna take a break, drink more water. Have you been drinking your water? Have you been staying hydrated? Once again, this fine vintage Kool-Aid. I am literally drinking the Kool-Aid. Tropical punch. What are you doing for dinner tonight? Me? We're having a chicken Caesar salad, which is basically a Caesar salad with rotisserie chicken pieces in it. It's gonna be tasty. And the house is going to stay nice and cool. I have a desk behind me. You'd never know it because it's become a cat bed. They tell me that it's going to get cooler next week. That would be really nice. No Sugar Company Joy Burst Energy Drink, Peach Mango. I'm not sure I can really say that I like it. It's not bad. Could be worse. It is made with Splenda, which is nice because so many of these no sugar drinks are made with stevia, and I'm not one of those people who like stevia. It just doesn't taste right. It's kind of like cilantro. Some people taste soap when they taste cilantro. It takes a whole heck of a lot of stevia for me to get any kind of notion of sweetness, and even then it's not sweet. Kinda yuck. So we're back down to the basement because it's still too noisy in the neighborhood to do a wrap up in the driveway. One of the drawbacks of filming where and when I do, because by the time the sun has sunk far enough behind the neighbor's house to keep the camera from blowing out the picture, everyone's coming home from work. The top has one major flaw that is most certainly the fault of past me, and that's it's too small. Apparently past Mare looked at the bust measurement and nothing else because there's no way I'd be able to button this shirt. Which is why I haven't put any buttons on it yet. I'll wait until my waist and my hips can fit more comfortably before I do that, which saves me from using buttons I might use elsewhere and leaves me with a cute little cover-up in the meantime. Once in a while we do go out in the evening, and having something with long sleeves that isn't too heavy to throw on over a nice top or tank is a good idea. I'm getting used to the bell sleeves though. I almost caught them on the stair railing on my way out of the basement earlier. I guess it's a good thing I didn't get this top finished in time, even though it sewed up pretty quickly. I probably wouldn't have been able to wear it at our relative sizes, and that obviously left room for something else in my luggage that actually would fit. And over-the-top embroidery aside, I could see this being a pretty successful 1 or 2 day make if I had the pattern already traced out in the right size. While it didn't quite fit in the waist and the hip, it was 100% on point for my shoulder width, and it didn't do too badly in the bust. So I could see going up a size in the bust and a couple of sizes in the waist and hip. Maybe even draft out just a little wee bit past the pattern a bit in those areas just for a little extra ease. I do really need to start noting down the sizes of the things I trace though, because that's information I might have found useful. Otherwise, this would be a fabulous top to turn into yet another shirt dress, because that seems to be a trend for me. I was a bit worried about the fabric. Luckily, the weather eased up today and we're having a bit of a break from the heat wave. It's not as smoky out today either. Maybe now that Jasper's been sacrificed to the fire gods, they'll be a little easier on us. I'm not happy about that, by the way. I like Jasper. I hope they're able to rebuild. I love the embroidery on the back. Maybe it's a good thing this top doesn't fit quite yet, because that gives me the opportunity to do something totally over the top, like repeat the motif around the bottom of the sleeves, which I am seriously considering doing. I'm also considering embroidering ladybugs on the lapels. I might have started something. Will I make this top again? Most definitely. And I'm thinking of making it in the popular view, which is with the little knot at the navel. The only reason I didn't try that look with the current blouse was because the tails of the shirt are just not quite long enough for that, but it would be an option to make a not quite fitting top work otherwise. Next time I'll probably use some blouse weight cotton or linen if I can find it at a decent price. Maybe something with a little bit of whimsy to it. Not that plain black can't be whimsical, it just takes a bit more work. While this is the last item in the planned capsule, this is definitely not the end of my sewing for the near future. I mentioned going shopping earlier, and there are some pretty awesome projects coming down the pike. I'm just not sure which one to make first, to be honest, so stay tuned for that. Speaking of shopping, I'd like to thank my patrons and supporters for all their assistance. Fabric and patterns have been a real investment this summer, and your contributions have helped tremendously. If you're not one of my supporters, there should be links below with more info. If a commitment's not your thing, I do have YouTube's monetization tools turned on. But most of all, I'd like to thank you for watching. It means a lot. And if you're still a little new to what I'm doing, you can find the full playlist somewhere up there. Now I get to edit everything. Ooh. At least I can do that on the couch now that things have cooled down a bit. Yay!
I was in so many films where you'd get the dialogue and you couldn't say it. I mean, you could sort of, we would used to say to George Lucas, you can type this, but you cannot say. It'll take a couple of minutes for the Navicomputer to calculate the coordinates. So there was, in self-defense.
I thought that was very good.
Thank you.
I think
It took 20 takes.
This is probably the most dangerous section because you can get everything from real wool coating to mystery plastic. This is probably the most dangerous section because you can get pretty much everything from real wool coating to mystery plastic blend blouse drape frab. Blah, blah. It made sense when I wrote it. Mystery plastic to mystery plastic blend blouse drape frab. Makes sense in my brain. It just doesn't make sense to say. And I don't know how else to say it. Mystery plastic blend blouse drape. Mystery plastic blend. Mystery plastic blend blouse drape. Mystery plastic blend. Mystery plastic blend blouse drape. I'm George fucking Lucas.